The new Orc Codex is available for pre-order from today. Thanks to Games Workshop for sending this through to me and to other content creators so we can give you guys some idea of what's inside this book. As an Orc collector and a big Orc fan, I don't know what I was expecting. I certainly wasn't expecting 6 detachments in here. But I guess 6 detachments make sense when some factions only have 4, because Orcs are one of the OG factions from back in the day, and their model range has been updated recently over the last couple of years. They've actually got quite a broad collection of stuff to get. It's a full codex. I guess I was hoping for something more in line with the Necron Codex, which has got some good internal balance and some good detachments in it, whereas this one feels a bit more like the Tyrannid Codex, a bit more spread out. The green tide detachment looks very interesting, but that only affects one datasheet in the entire codex, the Boyz. I guess it is called the green tide, but we haven't had a detachment rule yet that is that specific. Well, we have now. It's strong though. And the Dread Mob, well, the Dread Mob really wants you to get as many Dread vehicles, Death Dreads, Gorkanauts, Morkanauts as you can get your teeth on, and maybe some mech guns as well. The other thing is, this is the first time a codex has released where the index army is exactly the same. The army rule is exactly the same, wow, which is you can advance and charge when you declare a wow, you get a 5 up invulnerable save, +1 strength and attacks. That hasn't moved, that dial hasn't moved. And the Warhorde, which is the generic index card thing that we've been playing with since 10th edition is released, well, Get Stuck In is still the same. Sustain hits, your army, 6s explode in close combat, that's the same. And all the enhancements are the same. And all the stratagems are the same for the Warhorde from the index. We haven't seen that before. Basically, if you were playing Orcs in the index and you want to use the Warhorde thing, then nothing has changed as far as the stratagems, enhancements and things. That's all the same. The only changes that you'll find are the individual data sheets themselves, which have all been tweaked here or there. Well, not all of them are tweaked. Many of the data sheets are the same, but there's many little changes in here as well. So as ever, when you get your hands on the new codex, make sure you have a good look at each individual data sheet that you're using for your army, because some of them have changed, some of them haven't changed. And what I want to talk about mainly in this review is the detachment stuff, but we'll briefly skirt over some of the data sheet changes. So as I said, many of the individual data sheets have stayed the same, but let's touch on some of the ones that stood out for me. This is not a comprehensive list on every single change, but the ones that stood out for me. So right off the top, gone is the Nob with a War banner, which is sad because I own that model, but he's gone. He was an old fine cast model, so I get it. Gaz finally has a strike and a sweep mode in attack. Previously he only had 6 attacks, but now he can go up to 12 attacks when he does his sweep mode. And at strength 8, -2 damage, that's quite juicy. The Death Dread has gone from strength 10 to strength 12. There's a Dread Mob detachment in here, so bringing it in line with its Space Marine equivalents up to strength 12, that's nice. Killer Cans, on the other hand, have to roll a d6 every time they want to shoot. Now, I'm all up for Orcs hurting themselves. I'm all up for hazardous weapons all across the Orc Codex. Love that idea. But they're going to roll a d6 every time they shoot, and on a 1 or 2, they hurt themselves. And it's not like a mortal wound or d3 mortal wounds. If they roll a 1 or 2, when they're selected to shoot, that unit suffers d6 mortal wounds. That's pretty fruity. On a 3 to 4, it adds 1 to the strength of the shooting attack, and on a 5 or 6, it adds 1 to the number of attacks that you get with a shooting attack. But basically, Killer Cans shooting d6 mortal wounds to themselves. They could hurt themselves quite a lot, so perhaps the best way to run Killer Cans going forward is just to give them all the claws and send them flying up the table and don't bother shooting at all. Beast Boss on a Squigosaur, always a popular choice, along with the Beast Boyz. Well, he gives you +1 to the charge roll now when he's attached to a unit, rather than re-roll the charge roll now. Bit of a downgrade, but +1 to charge is still nice. The Battle Wagon Kill Cannon's gone down in shots. The custom Mega Cannon on your mech guns has gone down to AP -1 instead of AP -2. So the Bubble Chucker is probably the way to go on your mech guns now. Nobs used to have a really nice rule where they were always -1 to wound. Now they're only -1 to wound if the strength of the attack is higher than the toughness of the shots coming into them or fights coming into them, and so long as there's a war boss still leading them. So they've nerfed knobs a little bit. Having said that, mega knobs, the other types of knobs, well, they get a 4+ feel no pain when a war is called, when the war is called. A 4-up feel no pain on the war. I like it. I feel like mega knobs are overcosted and underpunchy, like 2 kill saws is only 2 attacks now that hit on 4s. With twin linked, you're really relying on the wah to get their strength and attacks up to make mega knobs sing. So anything that they could do to improve mega knobs, because they are pricey, is good. 4-up feel no pain on the wah, very good. I like it. I can see people bringing mega knobs, particularly given one of the detachments in here. Now, talking about Squig Hog Boys, you used to bring Squig Hog Boys into units of 3 or 6 and then attach a knob on a Smasher Squig to them so that they could go up to a unit of 7. But now they're units of 4 or 8, and the knob on Smasher Squig isn't a separate entry anymore. I was talking to a couple of Orc players who got frustrated by the fact that the knob on Smasher Squig, which comes in the box with the Squig Hog Boys, was a separate index entry, but that's changed. It's just rolled into the datasheet now. So a unit of 4 Squig Hog Boys, which will include 1 knob on a Smasher Squig, is 150 points according to this book, or a unit of 8 Squig Hog Boys, which will include 2 knobs on Smasher Squigs, will be 300 points. Now the thing is, you're supposed to use the most recent codex points from warhammercommunity.com, or if you scan the QR code in the back of this book to go to the most recent points on warhammercommunity.com, then it doesn't show that at the time of filming. They're going to need to update the points really quickly to bring them in line with this book, because the book says the knob on the Smasher Squig is part of the detachment datasheet, and on warhammercommunity.com in the most update it's not. So they're going to need to sort that out. So I imagine a points update fairly soon. To give you some idea, for example, if you had a unit of 6 Squig Hog Boys using the warhammercommunity.com points, the most up-to-date points, a unit of 6 with a knob on Smasher Squig will cost you 310 points according to the points at the time of filming. The book, however, that's 7 for 310 points. The book, however, says 8 will cost you 300 points with 2 knobs on. It needs sorting out. What it does mean is that you'll be able to run larger units. Instead of units of 7 of these guys floating around all over the place, there'll be units of 8 running around all over the place. And their individual rules haven't changed. They're the same as what they were. They've still got their feel no pain. They've still got the shenanigans. They're still one of the best units in the codex. They're still unleashing bomb squigs all over the place. At least, however, in this book, the strength, AP, attacks, and damage of all basic orc weapons like power claws, choppers, rockets, things like that, your basic stuff, the strength, AP, attacks, and damage are the basic bits that we use all the time as orc players. At least they haven't changed any of that stuff. Most of your bits will still be doing what your bits do, unless you've lost your bits down the back of the sofa and then you have to take all the pillows out, and then it's a hell of fluff and leftover bits of breakfast cereal down there, and you need to get the hoover out to get it all up, and it's horrible when you get your bits stuck. Don't get your bits stuck. Talking about bits, let's go through the detachment rules, and as you can see, the army rule has stayed the same. I don't think they needed to change it. It works. I'm glad they didn't change it. And then the basic orc detachment is now called War Horde, but that's the one from the index. Get stuck in, melee weapons equipped by orcs. 6s explode. We know this stuff. And as I mentioned, the enhancements and stratagems are all the same from before, which is weird. Next up, we have Da Big Hunt, which affects beast snaggers only. All the enhancements and stratagems just affect beast snagger infantries or beast snagger mounted, beast snaggers basically. The Big Hunt, you got to select a prey unit from your opponent's army, which is a monster vehicle or warlord, and if there's no monsters or vehicles or warlords remaining, you can select a character. But basically you oath of moment something, you say that thing, I'm going after that thing. And then your beast snagger units can reroll charges against them, and when they target the prey, they can improve the AP of those attacks by 1. Now, at the start of the review, when I was saying I hope it was more Necron-ish, this book, rather than Tyranid-ish, this is what I mean. This is a bit more Tyranid-ish than Necron-ish. The Necron Codex has lots of nice generic things that kick off all the time. This one, for example, is rather Tyranid-ish. You've got to select a prey, the monster, vehicle, or warlord, and then you reroll charges against that prey. Then you get improved AP against that prey, but it's very specific. There's only the Beast Snagger units in your army, and it's only versus the prey thing in your opponent's army. So we've got some very specific rules here, which, I mean, if you're bringing Beast Snaggers, you're probably bringing this one, maybe. But are you? Isn't Warhorde just better? Advance and charge in 1 turn and your whole army gets a 5+ invulnerable save. Plus you know what the strats in that one does, like -1 toughness with hard as nails. And it's got some good strats in it as well. Maybe you're not bringing this one. But if you are bringing this one, there is a very nice enhancement for a Beast Snagger model only called Proper Killy. Add 1 to the damage characteristics of the melee weapons. On a Beast Boss on Squigosaur, this will be good because then his Beast Boss Chopper will go up to 3 damage and the Squigosaur's Jaws will go up to 4 damage, which coincidentally gets you up to the same damage values as Moz Grog Scragbad, the named Beast Boss on Squigosaur, running around all over the place. He's got a 3 damage melee weapon and a 4 damage melee weapon. You can basically get your Beast Boss on Squigosaur up to the same damage value as that fella. And then you can give another fella Squirly as a Squig-off. So while the bearer is leading a unit of your Squig-Hop boys, every time the strength of an attack is higher than the toughness, -1 to the wound roll. We see a lot of rules like this coming through in 10th edition, but that will be a very good one for a unit of Squig-Hop boys running around all over the place, particularly as they have a high toughness and a feel no pain as well, keeping them alive for longer. Then the most useful stratagem in here is that one's even bigger. A Beast Snagger unit can charge after advanced or fall back for 1 CP. So 1 CP, you've got the WA thing. You can always advance and charge for 1 CP, but also fall back and charge as well. This is a go-to strat for the Beast Snaggers. Instinctive Hunters is quite nice as well. Movement wins you games. So the ability at the end of your opponent's fight phase to remove one of your units from the battlefield and place into strategic reserve. This will be a good one. So long as they're not in engagement range of anything, coming in from the flanks, getting secondary points, particularly if your Beast Snaggers are down to only a couple of models left in there. Then as for punching stuff, 1 CP, drag it down. You'll be using this one all the time, giving you sustained hits, which is basically the same as the basic Orc detachment. Sustained hits 1, 6 is exploding close combat. You have to pay a CP for this one. If you're fighting your prey unit though, 5s will explode in close combat with drag it down. But those are the go-to stratagems in this particular detachment. Next detachment, the Cult of Speed, for all you nitro boosting speed freaks out there. Speed freaks from your army are able to shoot in the turn which they advance and fall back, not charge. Again, one of these specific ones. You can shoot when you advance, you can shoot when you fall back, but it's not fall back and charge. It would have been nice for fall back and charge for things like War Bikers and the Death Killer War Trike. But when you actually look at the Cult of Speed models, the Speed Freak models in this codex, it is actually mainly about the shooting. There is a lot of Speed Freak models in this codex. It's tempting to think, well, that's mainly the Death Killer War Trike and the War Bikers, but it's all of the vehicles as well, the Speed Freak models, and all of the planes. The Blitzer Bomber, the Dakar Jet, the Burma Bomber, the Waz Bomb Blast Jet. There's 4 planes in here. Not that you're going to be using aircraft anyway, because 10th edition, who uses aircraft? But also the Boom Dakar Snazwagon, the Mega Track Scrap Jet, the Custom Booster Blaster, the Shock Jump Dragster, the Rucker Truck Squig Buggy. There's a lot of Speed Freak units in this book, and almost all of them do want to shoot. They're not that punchy in close combat compared to most Orc stuff, so fall back and shoot or advance and shoot. That's nice. As for stratagems and enhancements, it's a bit of a mixed bag. There's some that affect both. Faster Than Use is the best enhancement I could find, An Orc's infantry model, each time the bearer's unit disembarks from a transport after that transport has made a normal move, is still eligible to charge. So 12 knobs coming out of a Gorkanaut, not 12 knobs. Gorkanauts have a transport capacity of 12. 6 knobs coming out of a Gorkanaut after a Gorkanaut moved. That's very exciting. Morkanauts only move 8 though. So you're probably looking about jumping out of a battle wagon which moves 10 and still has a transport capacity of 22. People love Land Raiders in this edition because you can move the Land Raider, you can disembark, you can still charge. Well, you can do it with this enhancement so long as you've got the Speed Freaks detachment. So that's a go-to one. And then as for stratagems, the speediest of freaks. Give your Speed Freaks units a 5-up invulnerable save. The aeroplanes or a truck, a flat 5-up invulnerable save is nice. Most Speed Freak units have a 6-up invulnerable save anyway. But if the target of the stratagem is a vehicle with a toughness characteristics of 8 or less, and those are all the buggies, the Rucker Truck Squig Buggy, the Shock Drum Dragster, the Custom Booster Blaster, all of them count as that. They're vehicles with an unmodified toughness characteristics of 8 or less. They'll get a 4-up invulnerable save. And you can use it in the shooting phase or the fight phase for 1 CP. This is a very good one. Freaky, speedy people will be using it all the time, giving themselves better invulnerable saves all the time. Daka Storm. Speed Freaks want to shoot. Giving them sustained hits 1, or if they're close, sustained hits 2. We like this. Anything that helps boys in the shooting phase is a good thing. Then Full Throttle helps in the punching phase. You're going to be using this on your Death Killer War Trike with your War Bikers. +1 to the wound roll. It's quite strong. It's not +1 strength, +1 to the wound roll. If a Death Killer War Trike is leading a unit of War Bikers, they're hitting on 2s anyway, because that's what knobs do when they're attached to a unit. So hitting on 2s with +1 to wound, you're going to want 2 Death Killer War Trikes. You're going to want 2 units of War Bikers, because this stratagem is just too good if you're getting the Speed Freak detachment thing, which means that I'm going to need another Death Killer War Trike if I want to run this one properly. I mean, you can do it with 1, but one of them is going to die, so 2 means you'll get to pull this off more than once. And then more gets over here. Movement wins you games. The ability to move after your opponent moves, particularly with a fast Speed Freak army, preventing charges with some of your shooty things. I like any stratagems like this. 1 CP to move after your opponent moves. I like them. So that was the Cult of Speed. We're now onto the Dread Mob, which affect Mech, Orc, Walker, and Grot vehicle units from your army. Grot vehicle units being killer cans or mech guns. So just those units. All the stratagems and enhancements affect only those units as well. And Games Workshop have leaked this one over the Warhammer community website. Basically, before you shoot or fight, roll a dice, see what they've got from the chart below, either sustained, lethal, or AP goes up. Or you can pick instead, and if you pick instead of rolling, then your attacks count as hazardous. Or rather, your weapons count as hazardous. And interestingly, the Gretchen gain battle line if you bring the Dread Mob. So instead of having 3 units of Gretchen, you can have 6 units of Gretchen running all over the place, supporting the Dread Mob, which is actually quite a good choice come points. Basically, you've got some expensive stuff. You've got killer cans, you've got mech guns, you've got Gorkanauts, Morkanauts, Death Dreads stomping around all over the place. And to make the Dread mob sing, you're not going to want a Gorkanaut and a Morkanaut. Really, to make it sing, you're going to want 2 Gorkanauts, 2 Morkanauts, 3 whole killer cans units, 3 whole Death Dreads running around. Those things are pretty pricey. So then you're going to fill up with Gretchen battle line units that can help zone out, that can help steal you CP, because they're thieving little gits, so they still have that rule. But zone out areas, move block areas, and they still have an OC of 2 Gretchen, which is hilarious. I'm actually quite fond of the Gorkanaut and Morkanaut and often run them together. I think they're quite appropriately points costed, despite that. I mean, they're big, chunky things with lots of wound, high toughness. And they're around 300 points each, which is quite good for what they are and what they do, with a transport capacity of 12 as well. Not sure I'll get any more. Don't think you really need to get many more, but I've definitely got some dev dreads coming from Den of Imagination Painting Studios. They painted up all my orcs. I've got a couple more dev dreads on the way. Dev dreads are good in this edition. So the dread mob with some mech guns and killer cans that are not shooting but charging up the table with you. There's some teeth in this, in the dread mob. For my money, the go-to enhancement is Smoky Gubbins for a mech model only. Models in the bearer's unit have the stealth ability. Now your mechs, they can join looters, which you're not going to bring, but they can also join mech guns. So the big mech, the new big mech model and mechs can join your mech guns and giving them stealth. That's nice. I mean, there's another enhancement. If you don't want stealth, there's another enhancement that can give mech guns. Well, the mech ignores cover instead of stealth. That's also nice. Stratagems, clanking claws. So most of the stratagems are written like this, which is add 2 strength, add 2 to the strength characteristics of your orc walker in the fight phase. Probably not doing this on the Gorkanaut or the Morkanaut because they're strong enough. This is going to be on your Death Dreads, getting them up to strength 14, add to the strength characteristics. Nice, but a lot of the stratagems have got this push it thing. If you push it, you can add 1 to the damage as well, and then they have the hazardous ability, which hilariously means that if you roll a chunk of 1s, if you push it, you could kill your Death Dread in 1 round of combat if you just roll a chunk of 1s, because each one you roll will do 3 damage, and Death Dreads have 8 or 9 wounds. Forget how many, something like that. I think it's toughness 9 with 8 wounds. But yeah, so 3 1s, they're dead. And getting +1 damage means those claws that the Death Dread had goes up to 4 damage. Strength 14, 4 damage a time against the Redemptor Dreadnought, particularly after you've tank shocked them on the way in. Death Dreads before this codex, if they charge, tank shocked Redemptor Dreadnought kills them. With clanking claws, with tank shock, with extra strength and damage against Redemptor Dreadnought, kills Redemptor Dreadnought. So I like it. Then we have Daka. Reroll hit rolls of 1 for your Orc, Walker or Grot's vehicle. I'm thinking this on Gorkanauts and Morkanauts, re-rolling hit rolls of 1. Well, basically the big redden, the Gorkanaut, and if you push it, re-rolling all hits. And that means that the mega gun, the guns on the Gorkanaut are hazardous anyway. So if you push it on the Gorkanaut so that they've got reroll all the hits, when you've got a hazardous on a hazardous in the Dread Mob detachment, your hazardous kicks off on a 1-2, not just a 1. So you're going to be hurting yourself, which will be hilarious. But this will be a very strong one on a Gorkanaut. You could potentially put out a lot of damage, but you could potentially really hurt yourself back again, which I like. I like those things. Bigger shells for bigger gets. Again, in your shooting phase for a mech, an Orc Walker, a Grot's vehicle. When you target a monster or vehicle, add 1 to the wound roll. This will be very good on your mech guns. If you push it, you add 1 to the damage of that attack as well. Just very good on your mech guns. And then I like Conniving Runts. This is one of those stratagems which allows you to move again after your opponent makes a movement. Normal move, advance or fallback move. You can target a unit Gretchen and then they can make a normal move. Great. But on a 4-up, the enemy also suffers D3 + 1 mortal wounds because they've laid some sneaky traps and claymores behind them. So it's movement after your opponent moves. All these stratagems are good, but with a little sting in the tail, a 50-50 chance on a sting in the tail, because Gretchen are Conniving Runts. Beautiful. What a beautiful stratagem. Next up, we have the Green Tide Detachment, which is unique in Warhammer 40k, as it only affects 1 datasheet in the entire Orc Codex. That datasheet being Orc Boyz. Orc Boyz will have a 5-up invulnerable save, and if there's 10 or more models in the unit, they reroll saving throws of 1 as well. So to make Green Tide really work, you're looking at 6 units of 20 boys. 6 units of 20 boys with a 5-up invulnerable save is strong. It's 1,020 points worth of strong using the points from the Warhammer community app. So it's half your army of strong, but half your army, toughness 5 with a 5 up invulnerable save, re-rolling, saving throws of 1 on 1 you're going to get a lot of ball control. And there's so many damage 2, damage 3 weapons in the game right now. Going full horde mode with these guys isn't... I looked at this originally, the Green Tide one, and thought, wow, this is the go-to one. This is the one that people are going to play all the time. This is very strong. And then it was like a light bulb going off. No, 1 minute. This only affects Boyz. This only affects that one data sheet. So it's really strong for them. The rest of your army isn't touched by this. And all the stratagems in this as well only affect Boyz. So you're going to have a really strong detachment rule for Boyz only, and stratagems for Boyz only. The rest of your army does what the rest of your army does. But it's really strong for Boyz only. Particularly with the enhancement Bloodthirsty Belligerence. While the Bella is leading a unit, you reroll advance rolls, and while it's got 10 or more models, you can reroll charge rolls. Remember, when a war is called, if you've got 10 or more models in a unit, you'll be advancing and charging and rerolling the advance and rerolling the charge. That one is very nasty. Then, as for stratagems, they already leaked Come On Lads on the Warhammer community thing. So that's the one where you can put orc models back in, return destroyed models to units. And they also leaked Bulldozer Brutality, so everyone within 3 inches of an enemy unit during the fight phase can fight, not just models that are in engagement and touching models that are in engagement. You've got more fights in, bigger mobs of boys can get all of their attacks in. They leaked those 2 ones. But there's some other really good ones in here. Tide of Muscle for Boyz units only, obviously. But until the end of the phase, each time you charge, add the current battle round to the charge roll. So assuming that first turn charges are out, that you're going to be using this in turns 2 or 3. In turn 2, you're going to be adding 2 to your charge roll. In turn 3, you're going to be adding 3 to your... In turn 4, if you've still got a unit running around, adding 4 to the charge roll. It's nice. One of the reasons why I like stratagems like that is because it's simple and sweet. You can read it and understand it straight away, and you're going to want to use it. As for punching stuff, more good stratagems. Competitive Streak. Basically, your boys, when they fight, reroll wound rolls of 1. That's always good. Rerolling wound rolls of 1. And then if your unit contains 10 or more models, you're rerolling all the wounds. That's a go-to one. So, the Green Tide looks really strong. The Green Tide looks stupid strong, but only for Boyz, so it's probably not that strong. I am looking forward to some games where people are putting down 100 Boyz, 120 Boyz on the table and trying to make this one work. That'll be very exciting to see. I think I've got 80. I think that's the most I can get to. Right, finally, last attachment, you can call a second war, but when doing so, that second war only counts as having been called for war bosses, knobs, and mega knobs units from your army. This detachment is called Bully Boys, and it's all about the war bosses, knobs, and mega knobs, the bully boys in your army. So there's a second war that only affects them, and there's a beautiful enhancement called Teleporter, war boss in mega armor. Models in the bearers unit have the deep strike ability, so you're going to be deep striking your war boss in mega armor in, along with a bunch of mega knobs. As ever, all the stratagems in here only affect your war bosses, knobs, and mega knobs. So this one, Arm to Datif, only affects knobs and mega knobs units from your army, and they can reroll hit rolls of 1. Assuming that they're going to be led by something, then they're hitting on 2s anyway, rerolling hit rolls of 1. So the second part, which is if the war is active for your unit, you can reroll the hit roll instead. I guess you could pick up all the dice and fish for 6s if you've got critical hits in there somewhere, but just re-rolling hit rolls of 1 when you're hitting on 2s because you're being led by something is great. Unless you're a mega knob with your power claws and kill saws, then you're hitting on 3s because of the way those weapons work when you've got a knob nib. Anyway, this is a good one, re-rolling hits. And then Hulking Brutes is also a good one. It's basically Armor of Contempt in your shooting phase, so reduce the incoming AP of stuff by 1. Armor of Contempt is good. Space Marine players use it all the time. I use it all the time when I'm playing Space Marines. Hulking Brutes, good. The rest of them are a bit too specific and Bully Boys because it affects knobs and mega knobs, and because it is so specific, is one of these detachments that I don't think we're going to see that much. It'll cost you a lot of points to put down multiple units of knobs and mega knobs, particularly if they're backed up by war bosses as well. You get a lot of scary close combat threat for all those points, which is nice, but you're going to need some points left over for some DACA. It can't be all about the punch. You're going to need some suppression here or there. You're also going to need some throwaway units that aren't doing all the punch. You're going to need some Gretchen. You're going to need some sweeping units here or there to score some secondaries, move block, camp on objectives, things like that. And you don't want a big unit of knobs or a big unit of mega knobs, particularly with a war boss attached, camping somewhere. That you want them up in the gut doing something. So it's not necessarily that this detachment is a bad one. It's just that it is so specific, and the way that the fighting in Warhammer 40k works right now, scoring primaries, scoring secondaries, the way that the game actually functions right now means that this one is going to be an expensive one to make sing, and also pull off points, pull off the scoring opportunities here, there and everywhere. I'm not sure this is a go-to one. It'll be a great one for narrative play, or a great one for big points games, 3,000 points plus. It'll work really well for them. It kind of reminds me of the Green Tide one with the Orc Boyz running around all over the place. That one feels really strong and really good, but it's also very specific and tuned to Boyz. So then, what is the go-to detachment? Is it Cult of Speed? It gives you more opportunity to shoot. You can advance and shoot, you can fall back and shoot, but shooting and orcs doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with each other. I'm sure there's some lists out there that you could make as shooty as possible, but I'm not sure the Cult of Speed is the one either. Orcs are not really known for shooting, are they? And then you got Dread Mob, which makes your Killer Cans and your Gorkanauts, Morkanauts, Death Dreads a lot more effective. There's some very good stratagems in there. And running around with a low model count, high toughness army, which is what this thing will be if you lean into it. Running around with a low model count, high toughness army will cause problems for some army lists. So that's interesting. The Big Hunt, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's some very interesting detachments in here, but they're very specific. The Green Tide, boys only. Dread Mobs, walkers only. The Big Hunt, beast snagger stuff only. Cult of Speed, speed freak. So they're very, very specific. Of course, all the 10th edition codexes have been like that, but other 10th edition codexes have a couple of generic things that you can do, like Hypercrypt Legion for the Necrons. You can do that with anything. I mean, it benefits deep striking units, but you can pull it off with a generic Necrons army. The Space Marine detachments lean towards certain weapon types, not necessarily certain units. The Storm Spear, one heavy. In this book, there is the one generic one, the Warhorde, and it hasn't changed from the index. I guess there's just one good generic one, though. At least it is a good generic one. I like it. But I would have preferred another one as well. Maybe a lucky one, with everything painted blue. Anyway, what are your thoughts, comments, feedback and things? What do you think about the new leaks for the Warhammer Codex that you've seen online on Warhammer Community, or some of the thoughts that you've got from this review down below? Do you play orcs? What works well for you? I'm asking for a friend. Seriously, what works well for you? Do you play against orcs? What are you terrified? Please tell me. I need to know. Anyway, thanks for listening to this video. Happy wargaming.